Are you ready to live the life you deserve? Do you want to feel vibrantly healthy and reach your optimal weight without dieting while being kind to animals and the planet? Then you're in the right place at the right time. Get ready to hear from doctors, nutritionists, experts, and everyday men and women committed to creating a powerful life in mind, body, and soul through ethical food choices. Welcome to Plant-Based Eating for Health with your host, certified plant-based nutritionist, Kathleen Gage.
Well, I am so excited today because I am here talking with my good friend and my editor, Madeleine Eno of In the Right Place. And I got to tell you, there's so much going on in the world right now around health, around business, around performing at your best. And the reason I wanted to have you on the show, Madeleine, is because one, you're a plant-based eater, so that kind of fits with the theme of the show for my plant-based show. And two, you've been running your business for quite some time. So let's talk about, first of all, how did you get involved in plant-based eating?
Well, I think I've shared this story with you, and thank you so much for this conversation today. It's always great to talk with you. I had started meditating in earnest 4 years ago, and during one meditation, I literally heard a voice say, "You're done with the meat." And I had made this promise to myself, if I ever received any kind of inspiration or guidance in meditation, that I would follow it. So I was like, oh no.
Anything but that.
Are you sure this one's for me? As I tell some friends, I had just bought a friend's raised this beef, and I had just bought like half a cow. It was in the freezer. So I gave it away and just started this experiment. And then the more I learned and the more I ate this way and felt better, the more it just felt like the path was just opening in front of me.
So in what you do, clarity is really important. And let's start with you sharing exactly what it is you do in your business.
Yeah, now that I've talked about receiving messages.
Yeah, it's like, okay, woo. Now let's talk about practical.
Yeah, I help people primarily. I help people clarify what they're really here to say, and most often and mostly these days, how to put that in a book, how to create the container of one book to share what they're here to talk about. And it's mostly people who are in business, whether they're coaches or healers or teachers of some sort.
And, you know, now with everything that's going on, I think there's going to be a resurgence of those people who communicate without having to leave the comfort of their home or their office, you know, in light of all that's happening in the world right now. As we're doing this conversation right now, we're in the middle of the beginning, I guess. I can't say we're in the middle, but we're in the beginning of the coronavirus. And it's the COVID-19. Did my first blog post on it today about how they actually can track that a lot of the diseases, viruses, and all the pandemics that have been going on, or the epidemics, are directly related to eating meat. And so it's like our timing for this is really quite good. But as you see the emerging trends around business, around being a plant-based eater, you know, what I really want to do is just kind of unwrap what's going on in the world today and why writing books right now is such a great idea, as well as doing podcast interviews. Yeah. So from your perspective, what are you seeing happen in business with people getting their message out to market?
Yeah, well, I think that's such a great point. And I think it's amazing how it does connect to how we eat. Who would have ever thought, you know, if someone had told you 10 years ago, you know, this is going to really affect how you think and how you are in the world, it would have been hard, for me at least, it would have been, I knew that eating healthy was really important, but then this new awareness about meat is another thing. For me, I feel like what differentiates us and what people listen to and how people really connect is by truth telling And I don't know about you, but I feel like the more we eat simply, the more we eat plant-based, the clearer our own thoughts are to us, and the easier it is to see when something's really out of whack.
Right.
It's
right.
hard to have any kind of unintegrity in you. It's hard to be out of integrity when you eat this way, because it's just so, for me, it's so obvious. And I don't have a lot of things now that I kind of cover up with, food or drink wise.
Right.
I don't have anything to kind of mute the truth. So I feel like that clarity and that connection to our own truth is a beautiful thing for entrepreneurs who are sharing their message or writing their books or talking on podcasts.
Well, and it's so interesting about the clarity and, really being focused on what we're doing, because with all the research I've done since going plant-based, and I recently got my certificate of completion through Cornell University. Yeah, I'm really excited about that. And that just shows me my level of commitment. But what I see to be true is that a lot of the challenges that we're having in business, in our health, in our finances, in so many different ways, it's directly related with people's health, and it's directly related with obesity. And one expert I was listening to said that the coronavirus, they can directly relate that to people's immune systems being compromised because of obesity. And a lot of people don't want to listen to that. It's amazing how a lot of people don't want to listen to the truth. And that's what I love about what you do with authors, is you help them to get their truth out to market. And in the people that you've worked with, who would you say are some of the most interesting people as far as unique messages that they've had, and what they're really wanting to accomplish in the world?
Well, present company included. Your book is fantastic, and your message is fantastic and ever evolving, as you look at where your message has come in the last year, oh man, what I was thinking, actually, I had a long drive yesterday and coronavirus all around us. And I was thinking, man, all the authors that I work with have a message that's appropriate for this time. Meaning some are talking about, how to talk. I just did a book that was fascinating about our polarized times. It's called The Change Code. And it's about how humans kind of evolve in terms of consciousness, and how it's not like above or below, but how to talk to people who are at different levels of consciousness without the polarization. It's a fascinating book. So there's that.
And what was the title of that book again?
The Change Code by Monica Bourgeau. It's a beautiful book. And I've done books on healing with from a dietary standpoint, about not drinking, about people sharing their story of learning how to manifest and create the thing that they know they're here to do in order to create change in the world. So I feel like everybody's story is really linked to dealing with the world that's changing fast and uncertain and unpredictable. All we have is ourselves and our own growth and our own clarity that we can kind of control. And I feel like that's how it all connects. This is what we got right now.
Absolutely. This is it right now. And actually, I was out at the park yesterday running. Karen took the dogs out. Her mom was with us. I was going to run. And we were talking about how, with all the external stuff going on, really where the point of power is in this moment right now at the park with what we were doing. And I think that's so important for, with the messaging that I have. I want to help people to understand that it's not something that's going to happen a year, 2 years, 3 years down the road, because we have no idea where we're going to be even a month from now.
Serious.
It's almost like being in a movie. And, I'm just like, okay, am I going to go into town? And this is the morbid side of my thinking. Am I going to see bodies strewn all over the ground? And it's like, in some cases, people have experienced that. And that's why, for me, it's so important to bring people to my community who are that aware as you are, about the materials people put out in business and also what we consume in our bodies. And how do you see the link between the food consumption and those people that consume animals and the, if you will, the unrest and uncertainty and stress that goes on in the world? Do you see a connection there?
I feel like there's a connection. I think I've talked to you about this, that, all right, here's how it always helps for me to see something like what's a physical evidence of this theory that I have. And one of the best physical evidences that I have of my theory, that basically, and I ate meat for a long, long time, so I really try and be open-hearted about this. However, and people eat meat in different ways, for sure. But my husband and I clean up our road a lot. We live on a road where, I don't know why, but people seem to throw their crap out the windows on this we live in a rural area too. And I'm always, every time we go out and collect on a Saturday, collect trash, I'm always saying to him, like, I have never seen a kombucha bottle or a tempeh wrapper or a wrapper of tofu pups or anything. It's all fast food containers, and it's all sugar and meat or alcohol related things. And whipped cream cans. I think people use the gas from the whipped cream cans. There are some of my neighbor, one of my neighbors is using a lot of whipped cream. But anyway, I feel like
I can't help but see this person that's like obesely overweight and getting high.
But they don't eat the cream. They just use the gas.
Okay,
they just huff the gas or whatever that is. I don't know how they do it. I would eat the whipped cream if I would. Yeah. But I think that's, to me, my evidence of, like, we just become more conscious. So I feel like, that's a very basic thing that we probably wouldn't throw our trash out the window anyway. However, I feel like there's something that cuts us off from the impact of our actions.
That's a really interesting perspective, and I completely agree with you, because I think that, well, I just got through reading Dr. Joel Fuhrman's book, The Fast Food Genocides, or Fast Food Genocide. Yeah. Phenomenal book, and he really gets into the whole issue of the amount of violence that we have in the world today, the shootings that are going on. A lot of things that people don't want to hear about. They're rubbernecking on the news to watch the sensationalism around it. But when it gets into what the core of the issue is, a lot of people don't want to hear it, because if they really hear it, they have to take responsibility, or they can choose not to and continue living in the state that they're living in. And is that judgmental? Absolutely. I tend to be a very judgmental person, but I look at my own behaviors, because I was definitely a carnivore. I mean, it's like the redder the meat, the more I loved it. I mean, it was like my whole thing when I'd go to a restaurant, when they'd say, how do you want your meat done? It's like, barely cook it. I want it mooing. And I mean, I look at that now and I go, oh, that's so cruel. But the fact is I think that something triggers in our brain when we put a lot of chemicals in, or a lot of processed food, that doesn't give us the clarity. And, that's one reason that I actually started this podcast show. I really want to do what I can to raise awareness, because I didn't come out of the womb being a plant-based eater. I mean, I definitely had that, as you know, I've been sober for 36 years. The interesting thing about the lifestyle I live now, I won't even buy leather shoes anymore, and I won't buy leather jackets. And I used to be very into everything leather was. They can read it in my book. That's my memoir, not my business book, but that's my memoir. But so I look at the transition I went through. What would you say to somebody who they know maybe that a change is in order, and that they're watching people like yourself and like me that are, we're living a healthy, vibrant life, and we seem to be relatively happy most of the time. It doesn't mean we don't deal with stress. It doesn't mean we don't deal with fear, but we handle it differently. So what would you say to somebody who's thinking of transitioning to a more plant-based lifestyle, but they're saying, oh, I don't want to give up the big one is the cheese. Where will I get? Yeah, I won't give up my cheese. And they say, I'm addicted to it. And it's like, yes, you are. It actually
that
is
opiate
made
quality in the brain, right?
Yeah. So how do you guide somebody to where they say they want to go?
Well, I think I think that's one of the things that so much has to come from within. But if they were really, really curious, I would love to cook for them. Like when I first had that awakening that I described about, or that message, that very weekend, I happened to be going to LA and staying with an old friend from my 20s who I hadn't seen since my 20s. We just reconnected, and she was a plant-based coach, and she had done the program that you did, and she was teaching and working at Whole Foods as a recipe creator. And so I had 3 days with her and ate like a queen of her beautiful plant-based food. And to me, that was the trigger that I needed, because I didn't just go to eating a sad spinach salad or something like that. Right, I felt like I entered, I saw into the doorway of what was possible. And I feel like that is, that was one of the keys for me, is just seeing, oh my God, it's delicious and abundant. And there are even cheese-like things. Like I believe me, if I could live on cheese. And I remember the Alaska Airlines menu has one thing that's just like, it's a little platter that's 5 different kinds of cheese. I used to just die for that on my trips on Alaska Airlines. I would always get it and have like really 5 different kinds of cheese.
Absolutely. It was
like, I loved it.
If I got a block of cheese.
Like, well, yeah. It's okay. If I can do it, you can do it if you really want to do it. Because I was a cheese head. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I think that's the big thing for people to understand, is like those of us who are 100% into the lifestyle, we didn't start out like this. I mean, I was so addicted to cheese. I was about 60 pounds heavier than I am now. And what's really amazing is when you eat a whole food plant-based protocol, the weight literally melts off, and you give your body the opportunity to heal itself. You give yourself, it's just a phenomenal way of living. Now, before I move on to the next question, How can people reach you?
Oh, yes. I'm just changing my website over to a new name, but they can still find it on the old name, which is intherightplace.com, WRITE, intherightplace.com.
And rightplace.com.
There are contact information aplenty on that website. It'll be different looking in a few weeks, but
okay. Well, by the time this airs, it may be the new look. And now
we'll get there.
Will it direct over with that URL to your new one? Okay, great. Now, what I do want to talk about is you recently did a retreat. It was a writer's retreat, and it was a huge success. It was a small, intimate group, and you fed everybody plant-based the whole time, which I love. I think that's so awesome. Now I put it in my speaking contracts that they have to provide me healthy foods while I'm on site. Because I really want to make sure that people understand that this is not a passing phase to me. This is truly a conscious choice that I've made. And with your retreat, what I was most impressed with is how much fun you had. You said the people were off the charts happy with what happened. There was a lot of transformation during the retreat. So tell us about the retreat, and if you're planning on doing more, would they find that information on your website?
They will. And I was going to do one coming up soon, but with all this, I've decided to hit the brakes on that one, and there will be more in the future. The essence of it is what happens with book mapping. It was a book mapping at the beach retreat, and what book mapping is what we did at the retreat together. I offer that one-on-one. We spend the day together for 2 days in a beautiful place. I live up in Mount Hood area. or at the beach in Oregon. It's so important to get out of your own environment to imagine. A book is huge, a huge thing to think about. So really getting into a very fresh new environment is really important. So that's kind of the goal of going away to work on it, whether it's at the retreat or one-to-one. As long as I'm healthy, I'll keep offering the one-to-one.
Well, let's hope you stay healthy for a long time, because my book still needs to be done.
Oh, I'm going to say, it's funny. I spent, like, in our world, we can spend a whole lot of time alone or just in our own little world. And I almost feel like I'm watching a movie too of all this. My husband's being sent home for 5 weeks from work.
Wow.
U of O.
You know, it's interesting because I was at a conference recently, and it was a podcasters conference. And while there, I didn't listen to the news. I got very little online time because I was really in the moment and in the sessions. And on my way home, I was flying from Orlando to Eugene, Oregon. So I decided, okay, I'm going to flip on CNN. And boy, that was a mistake. And not because it was CNN, because I prefer that over Fox News. So, you know, my political leanings, but because I was just bombarded with all this information about, you know, everything that's going on. And I just thought, you know, for me, I need to just chill and not spend all my time getting sucked in, because that's what the media is designed to do, is suck us in and put us in a place of fear, regardless of what side of the political spectrum we come from. But one of the things I do know is that getting away from everything, like you said, and going in nature, and I'm very blessed to be able to live in a rural community. I go out to Mount Pisgah quite frequently, run near the river with my rescue dog. She's just a delight. Not everybody thinks so when she's going, but that being said, I really want to dig a little bit deeper and unwrap the whole energetic side of plant-based eating, because I remember the first time that I walked by the meat department in the grocery store, and I got a visceral response to the animals, just the pain that they were experiencing. And so often people don't want to hear about what goes on in factory farms. They say, if I know what's going on, then I won't want to eat meat. And it's like, good. That's kind of the idea. Yeah. But what do you see as far as like that whole connection between what's going on in factory farming? Because 95% of the meat that we consume or people consume comes from factory farms. Yeah. And just, you know, I really want to dig deeper into the whole energetic side of being more productive and what we can do to not only give up the meat, and what we get as a result of it. Because a lot of times people see it as giving things up instead of what am I gaining? So let's start with that perspective. What do you think people will gain?
Well, yeah, I love that question. I seriously don't think I've given anything up. Just to say that, I feel like I have not given anything up. And the world is still super geared to a meat-eating population. However, my God, and I have not had one at Burger King because I probably wouldn't go to Burger King, but if Burger King has an Impossible Burger, oh my God, what is possible here? That would have felt impossible.
Right.
One of the things that has struck me, and it took a while to catch up with me, but I did a yoga teacher training probably 10 years ago now, and the teacher had been a long time plant-based, you know, maybe his whole life, or he's 70, maybe since his 20s, from the yogic perspective. And his the basic tenet of that was, if you eat something that has suffered, you will suffer. That was the simplicity of the energetics and I still ate meat after that yoga training, but I never forgot that belief. And for me, that is one of the huge gains, is I feel, and maybe, you know, I've also gotten older as I've eaten this way, so that could be responsible, but I feel so much more peaceful.
Right.
In terms of my reaction to things. I've always been a little bit chill, but inwardly, I would react a lot stronger, I think, and feel things more negatively, I think. So to me, that's one of the biggest gains is who knows how much suffering we eat. And there are people who say, oh, I think you and I have talked about this. If it's a grass-fed cow who's lived on a nice farm, had one bad day. And I'm like, well, if your uncle was murdered, you probably wouldn't say, he had a good life.
One bad day, too bad his throat was slit. Geez, I'm so sorry. And they bled him out.
So I feel it's kind of a crass way to look at it, but I don't quite go with the one bad day. I think that cow would have rather had another
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, I've had people say, well, if they stop the factory farming, it'll do away with all the animals. Well, all these animals are put on the earth specifically for the suffering that they have to go through in order to be on people's plates. And, I did a blog post recently where I invited people to actually trace back to the very beginning of where that animal's life started. And I said, just meditate on that. And I find the more that I'm plant-based, the more I get into my meditation practices and my yoga. And I've been on a spiritual journey for a good 40 or 50 years. And I mean, since my teens, I was always, actually it was since I was about 9 years old. And it's in my book, My Death and Dying Experience, where I just questioned everything that I had been taught up to that point, but I learned to keep that to myself. And what I'm finding is the further I go into the plant-based lifestyle, the more I realize it's so important to do what we can to raise people's awareness. But the big thing that I find is we can't shove it down their throat. Because it's an invitation to consider. That's how I see it. It's an invitation to consider a different way of living. And I always invite people to try it for 7 days just to see what the physical benefits are. And then all that other stuff, because I started because of physical reasons. Yeah. And then all the other stuff came with it. And what was so interesting, and that I've been working in the pet industry for quite a while. Well, it hit me one day what a disconnect that was. Here I'm talking about rescuing animals, and we do a lot of rescue and being kind to the animals, and then I'm eating animals. It's like, okay, you need your disconnect. And so what would you say is one way that people can actually help to just raise that awareness? I know we've talked about it, but I think it's so important to continue that conversation of how can we raise the consciousness and the awareness, because in a lot of ways, we're screwed. I mean, you look around and the world is in such a world of hurt that if we can find some healing and some love in the center of all that, then we need to do it. So what's your take on that?
Yeah, well, I really believe, and I think this is a little bit of what we're getting now. We have this amazing online world of connection. However, now that we're all maybe going to be staying home for a month, we'll see our neighbors. And I feel like bringing together community and eating. We had started this women's community up here where I live, where there wasn't one. And last fall we had a big plant-based farm to table meal. It was beautiful. It was about 30 people. But I feel like sharing food, coming together and talking is what we all are craving, and the food can connect us. So I feel like locally, I so agree with you that it has to come from within. You were a super awake person. I was a very awake person and thought, I'm going to eat this really nice grass-fed beef and it's so healthy. And I just, no one could have told me differently.
Right. Absolutely.
Until something happened. So I feel like it has to happen. It's like getting sober. It's like anything major change. It has to spark from within because it requires some muscle to to do it. It
Absolutely.
requires some staying power. And if someone is just saying it to you. But anyhow, I just get this image of sharing. It was so important to me to go to that friend's house and be fed beautifully. I think that really changes us.
It's so amazing because for me, I didn't like to cook before I became plant-based. I just didn't like to cook, and it had to do with an ex-husband and on and on. I mean, I can dredge up anything from my past and make it work for me, but I just didn't want to cook, period.
Right.
And when I started plant-based eating, I started experimenting with recipes. Well, now my mother-in-law, she comes over and she goes, "Have you made that butternut squash soup? Have you made that zucchini soup? Have you made that whatever goulash that you make, whatever it is, the chili?" And I love experimenting with recipes now. And it brings me such joy to bring her such joy because she's in her 80s, and we're real concerned about her health right now. So her eating healthy is very important to me. And so for me, it's kind of like it's a movement and a prayer that I go through as I cook for her, because I think, okay, she's going to nourish her body. And that's something that plant-based eating has given me, is the ability to really see how it nourishes our mind, body, and spirit. So again, how can people get in touch with you? I just wrote that
down.
Okay, that was a good one.
Remember that, Kathleen.
Movement and a prayer. Maybe that'll be the name of this episode. But it's so exciting because I love talking about this topic. But before we go any further, again, how do people get in touch with you?
Madeleine at intherightplace.com, or my website is intherightplace.com, WRITE.
Okay, intherightplace.com, and we'll put that in the show notes. So when you're not cooking plant-based, when you're not working with clients, when you're not walking in nature, what are some of your favorite hobbies and things that you like to do?
Well, let's see, take off cooking and hiking and
there it goes. That's
writing.
It.
Let's see. Yeah. I love getting together with people, reading. It's been a nice winter for skiing, traveling, experiencing all that life has to offer. I like just taking it all in. And I really love just talking to people one-to-one like this. It's one of my favorite things to do.
Me too. That's that's what's exciting about what's going on, is podcasting is starting to explode for a number of reasons. But one is it's a great way to communicate. It's a great way to get our message out to the world. Yeah. And in closing, if there was one bit of insider wisdom that you could give to people that are actually in a place of fear right now, and they're just trying to hold on from day to day, what would you say to them?
I think respect what's going on, but respect the power of your own healing, your own vibrant health, and your own clarity to guide you to see what the next thing is to do. We all know the answer inside, and the more we can do to reduce the distractions and reduce the noise, the more we can see what our contribution is. Because I feel like we all are somehow we all ended up in this kind of wild world together right now with all these tools, and we're here for a reason, and the clearer we are, the more we can get in touch with that reason.
Wonderful. Well, Madeleine Eno, it has been delightful to have you on my show, Plant-Based Eating for Health. And I just am so excited about what you're doing and your next retreat and all the amazing things that you do for your clients so that they can do amazing things in the world. Thanks so much for being on the show.
Thank you so much, Kathleen.
Thank you for your commitment to an ethical life through plant-based food choices. The kind of choices that are kind to your body, the environment, and most of all, animals. Be sure to leave a review and rating of the Plant-Based Eating for Health podcast show.